Okay, the next thing I'm going to work on are the stiffeners that go underneath the door. I found there are two kinds. They're this kind, looks kind of like a trapezoid, and there's another kind that's a lot more triangular. It goes down to a point, and right below that point is a loop. I don't know what the loop is for, and the more common way is the trapezoid. So I was going to take a piece of like 40 thousandths square, 60 thousandths, and mount it under there. But looking at some photographs and some video, I think I can use this angle. I think it'll look better. And looking at this, the end of the stiffener goes not quite halfway, like maybe a third to either side, and it starts to taper right at the end of the rib. So I'm just gonna eyeball this, like if that's half, you know, that's about half, and that's about half. Need to be smaller than that. So I'm guessing like right around here. Darken this a bit. So I need it to be about that long. And what I'll use to cut this is this chopper. I could use the chopper, I could use a knife blade just to press down on it. I'll show you that one. I'm just lining the knife blade up with that line in this position, and simply pressing down on it. Now this is going to get trimmed, you know, to be shaped like this. I'm going to chamfer off those two corners, but I'm going to need another one of these. So I could just take this here. Let's try to flip this over so it's more stable. And just like that. And this one, just line it up just like this. And now I don't want to cut it when it's in the V shape, because that will it'll spread open the angle. So I want to make sure to keep that vertical. Okay, so I have these two, and to cut them I'm going to use these flush cutting pliers. And on the bottom of this body there's a ridge right there. And by putting the angle right up to that edge, not flush with the outside, it gives it a little bit of a shadow. Gives it it implies a little bit more depth. But to transfer these dimensions, I'm going to try to use the mathematical way. So it's 580 thousandths. And if these are 760 thousandths, 580, 680, 780, so it's 180. So if I go 90 more than that, this would be 100, and that would be 90. That'll be to one side, and that'll be to the other. I want to go about 90 thousandths here. this up, just eyeballing it. I'm going to check my math with a rough kind of estimation here. Yeah, that looks about right. So see now that's close enough. Put these calipers away. And I'll make these cuts right along here. I'm going to need one right hand and one left hand, and I guess they're both symmetrical, so it won't really matter. I just need to chamfer off the right bit. So with these open, I'm just going to line up the jaws, and then I'll squeeze it and cut it off. Make sure I get it in the corner, just like that. So there's one. And there's the other one. Double check to make sure they look symmetrical. This side might be a little short. Easy to clean up with a file. Just like that. I think that looks about right. Oh no, maybe that side's too long. I suppose I could always check it this way. So I'm not saying this is the best way. I'm just showing you how a regular kind of guy, just an average modeler, tries new things. I see that's about right. Yeah, actually, it's just a bit of an optical illusion, I suppose. So this is one, and I'll line these two up, like back to back. And I'll use one as a template to cut the other. It's a simple matter of lining up the ends, resting these flush cutting pliers on the existing surface, and keeping everything straight and even. Now it's probably not as important to get both of these identical as it is to get both angles of one identical, because you're not going to really see both of these at the same time. As long as you're looking at this and the angles look about right. And this one looks a little short. Just a quick little trim there. I don't seem to be quite getting into the corner of this. want to cut off much, just a thin sliver right there. Yeah, I think these look about right. Yeah, the shadow underneath one side makes it look longer. Okay, this is getting kind of full of glue, so I will look for another one. Can't seem to find it right now. I'll just use a spare plastic bag. Just put a little drop there. And I want it just on that inside surface. So once again, I can either take a knife blade, can take a small piece of wire to put it in there. Knife blade is usually handy. I just kind of dip it in a little bit that way so I get it on one side and not the other. If I got too much on there, just touch it a couple times to get rid of the excess. And I'm using the thicker type cement here because I want to make sure that this is a good strong bond, because it does hang down below the body. So I'm guessing it's gonna get knocked around. Now if I hold it with this, it'll probably be easier for me. So if I just estimate the center where this will go, the center of the door, the center of the piece, I could just line the tweezers up with the center line, and once it touches the glue, it should stick fairly well. It's got a little bit of tackiness to it, so I'm just pushing the part down in the glue, eyeballing it down here to make sure it's straight. And these sides bow in. Must be from the manufacturing process. It kind of warps the plastic. So before I get this in, I just noticed this little flange overhangs the body a bit, which could be an issue. I planned on slicing it off, but I planned on doing that after the glue had set. Well, it's not going to work in this case. Make sure that's seated down. That holds the other sides straight and parallel. I just need to center this up. Get these two angles equidistant from the door. I need to push down on that flange, and I don't want to push down on this leg because it could tip the part. So I put the flange of the I-beam, or any styrene shape, right down on that surface. And if you're careful, you could even use this side. You know, whatever's going to touch that flange. I'm going to glue this one in, this side. Too much on there, a little bit less. Just put a little bead right there. Won't take much. I'll center that up. Make sure it's on the surface square, flat, and it's pushed up to that little lip. Make sure it's centered. Probably go that way a little bit. This one's not quite there. I'm pushing it, I can't even really see it move. I can feel it move somewhat, but that's the small adjustments that I'm making. It's kind of a blind thing. You just do it and then you kind of step back and take a look. Is that about right? Eyeball right down the ribs. Slide it over a little bit, right down. Yeah, I think that's more even. Same thing with this one. Yeah, I think that's about right. I can take just to show, I could take a solid piece just as well as I could take a I-beam and push it down there. Push that down there. Now the bottom of this is kind of trapped in here, but once these things, once the glue sets up and cures hard, in a couple of hours, possibly overnight, it's best overnight, because even after a few hours the glue will have been set up and cured enough, but it's still kind of gummy. So I want to make sure that these sides don't bow in. Remember, so this is actually helping it stay straight. And with the floor being put in and out, these are going to take a bit of a beating. So I'll wait until the glue is dry before I cut that off. And leave enough room for the floor. The other thing I could do is notch the floor out. I don't see that. I think it's easier to cut a sliver off of this than it is to notch out that thick floor. As you can see, the wheels are pretty rigid. And let's see, yeah, it looks like they line up pretty well, centered. I've got that done. The glue has only been setting up there for a couple of hours, so it's not completely hard, but I think it would be good enough to drill those holes out. First of all, I want to put some of these other drill bits away. I get too many of them out. It's hard to tell what size is what size. It's always easy to find them if they're in the right place, so putting them away isn't a big deal. Now for that spike I need 50 thousandths hole. Here's 52. 40 thousandths. That looks pretty big for a spike. Well, let's double check. The profile is square. Oh yeah, it just needs to be like 30 thousandths. 20 something thousandths. I don't know where I got 50. But that means that this set is too big, only goes up to number 60. So I'll get out this little set here. This is a pretty cheap set. I don't remember how much it was. Probably just $5 or so. And it tends to get the job done, but the drill bits don't feel as tight, as sharp. Just the quality isn't quite there as some of the better ones. Excuse me while I look for my pin vise. Put some of these other ones away. I'm probably going to have to use this one, because even though this one's smaller, it doesn't close down to 0. Maybe it closes down enough. Maybe it does close. This one closes down enough for a 20 thousandths. I know it won't work with the number 80 drill bits. Yeah, okay. I want to drill this at least this deep. I want a little bit of the point to be a press fit, so it helps it hold itself in. So I'll just move the spike next to the drill bit, and then carefully slide the drill bit in to there. Now I know, but I don't really know that that's the right depth, so I'll stop short and test fit it. This one I want the hole to be a little bit high. Doesn't have to be on right in the center. But really the drill bit that I used to cut the hole for that tube probably made its own little cone at the bottom. I didn't see any chips coming out, so I want to be sure to get the chips out of there. The chips cause problems. They will clog up the drill bit, and believe it or not, this little drill bit will break because there's too much plastic down the hole. So just take my time, light pressure to get that done. Oh yeah, that feels good. I can push it in just a little bit. What I want to do is I want to square that up. I want to do it this way first. I want to flip it over. I want to work it from all the angles to make sure it's flat. I'll use the first one here as a reference. I think that's a good depth there. It matches pretty well. I just want to get rid of any burrs on the outside. So I'll just drag the knife kind of backwards across the corner at about a 45 degree angle. And that gets rid of most of them. Now this hole here, I'll leave the burr in there for one reason. When I'm going to dip this in glue and then insert it into there. Now any burr that's on there, I want the glue to kind of melt it. It is a solvent glue. And soften it up so it'll help anchor it. Now I'm not getting a big glob on there. I'm not going to put it in there with a big glob on. I get a glob on it just to get glue all the way around. And then I'll kind of wipe most of it off. There you go. Let's kind of press that down right about like that. Make sure the spike head is pointing down. Do a quick little test fit in here. Here I've got a railworthy Roadrailer. How about that? Fantastic. Yeah, there's not a lot of slack. Maybe I'll pull it out just a little bit to get a little bit of slack in there. The taper of these tweezers is so that I could see the spacing by how far I push that in. Make sure I have that vertical. Make sure we got that on there. Yeah, see now there's a lot more. So I know that the head of this is dropping down, push it in a little bit, is dropping down over the little ridge of plastic I have in there. Because I can feel it, you know, engaging. Like that, right, like that. 10 or 20 thousandths worth of play. That's so I know that it goes over that little hump in there. Make sure that that is vertical, and that's ready to ready for the next step. Which, what is the next step? What am I going to do next? I'll have to cut these off so I can remove the floor. I can put the landing gear. Oh, through the research I did, the earlier Roadrailers did have a flat pad like this. They didn't all have this. This must have been a retrofit done later in the years. Right here it says the landing gear had pads. So this is 186 and this is 186. So it is pretty close. It's not terribly wrong to have the this landing gear as opposed to this kind of landing gear. I do have some extra of these little handles, or I could just bend up a piece of wire and I'll put in there somewhere. I did add some of these extra braces in here. So I can work on this. I have to cut these off when I figure out what's going to happen there. Okay, so the landing gear will be attached there. I don't know if I could use the existing pieces or not. Might have to cobble something up. Now for these axles, I originally wanted just to cut it off flush, and then I was going to take a square, small square piece of styrene, and just for quick argument's sake, I was going to put the square right on top of that whole area, but it looks a little bit big, or it didn't look right, like it's missing some detail. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one of these squares a little bit bigger, and this is just for illustration purposes, and I'll drill a hole and I'll slide this down over that shaft, and then once it's secured in place with glue, then I'll cut this off, so that way there will be a little bit of a round detail at the end of there. I could start work on this arm here, these little air cylinders, as well as the air hose. I can add that in there. Then I suppose I can get to installing these grab irons all the way around. Well, just on the sides and on the front, I suppose. See that once again, it's not a perfect model. It's got 4 ribs, and this doesn't have any ribs. It's all smooth. That one, this is the A-line trailer. Or no, this is the Rail Power Products. So it's got a slightly different end. So this one I will be able to put 4 grabs. Well, the spacing is wrong. Maybe to make the assembly all the same, I'll just put 1 bar across the whole thing. So if I put 4 separate, it'll look kind of funny on this surface. It will look funny, certainly, as opposed to putting the individual grabs between the ribs, which I will do here. I'll put those grabs. And this drop step, when the drop step folds up and down, it also swings these grab irons out. So when they're in the down position, they stand out from the ribs a little bit, and when it's folded up, then they kind of fold a little bit more flush into the surface. So this one is number 160, it looks like. Yeah. It's got grab irons on the front and a drop step, and it's got grab irons on the back with the drop step. For this one, they had the drop step or the grab irons removed, it looks like. So maybe I'll have to put some evidence of that, of them being removed from here. Just a couple of dimples, maybe. Nut bolt washer casting. Or just a little scrap of plastic. And I'll certainly include them in the back. The doors are completely wrong. But I'll cut this off. Well, I'll leave it there for now, as it'll provide a good mating surface. I won't use something this thin, but I'll be able to glue the back end to these supports, give a little more structure to it. And then I'll do just about the opposite as I did with the front. I'll just put it on the back here. So I put the tube in the back, but then I cut a square hole. So it looks like it would fit the square. Now this has got a square hole, but it's actually round in the middle. And then to secure one of these spikes inside there, I did the same idea. So I drilled a hole not through the center, but a little bit lower than the center, so that when a rod is stuck in here, see, it kind of makes like a little lip that the spike can hopefully hook onto. I'm not going to play around too much until that glue is dry. I might have to do a little bit of fitting to get that in there, but that's how close they'll be coupled. The prototype looks like it was coupled a bit closer than that. The model, that's going to be a little bit further apart because I want it to be able to negotiate like a number 4 turnout, which these probably will never see number 4, but if you plan for the worst, then you should be well covered just on an average layout. Now look at that, it's getting better. Oh, this is going to have to be cut out a little bit and a whole different bumper style put on. It's got kind of a little bump step up there. Every one of these is slightly different. The paint jobs that I've seen, there are 3 or 4, at least 3 or 4. There's this kind with no door. It needs a yellow patch and a blue logo, the Chesapeake and Ohio for Progress logo. And then there's, instead of Roadrailer being squished, 2 letters squished on one rib, it's just Roadrailer, and they all have yellow trim film and they're blue letters. And some have a yellow square with a blue logo, and some have a blue square with a yellow logo. I'll have to dig through my decals and find out what I have and what I'll be able to do. But I think I'm gonna almost run out of letters, so I'll have to pick and choose what car numbers I'm gonna number these. And some had, as I said, some had these trapezoid shaped steps, and others had just really a triangular shape with like a loop at the bottom, so that the ones with the triangle shape will have to match the proper number as well as the paint scheme. I could paint them all gray and letter them all like this, but I might as well take the extra step and find the appropriate models and try to get them as close as I can. But it's getting closer. I think that'll look great behind a passenger train. Coming along, slowly but surely.